Hello, hello. My name is River, and welcome to the Mother Architect podcast. In this space, we explore the cross section of the Venn diagram of creativity, spirituality, and quantum physics. My guest today is a beloved friend who goes by the name of Justus, also known as Justus the Mystic. Justus and I are both songwriters and musicians and seekers, although I think we both prefer to be thought of as something more of sonic architects. We both really love to explore in depth what authenticity, community, and connection really means. And in this conversation, we go deep into many things. We discuss spirituality, Western evangelicalism, politics, quantum physics, metaphysics. We go into all manner of things. And one thing I wish to say prior to beginning the conversation and sharing it with you is that we are not here to attempt to influence you. We are not here to push our perceptions upon you. We just invite you into this honest space, this honest dialogue where we speak freely with one another and we share our ideas freely. Justus, just so you know, is one of the wisest, most talented, and porous beings whom I have had the great honor of meeting and knowing and sharing musical spaces with and sharing relationship with and intermingling the mind noodles as we share ideas. And though neither of us have this call on our life to create a platform or to gain followers or audience, we do have a great vision for community and interconnectedness. We are not people who are seeking to gain followers or to become ourselves a product within this capitalistic framework. We're here to exist, we're here to be, we're here to seek. And in that, I wanted to invite you into our conversation. This is more of a conversation than anything. It's not a lesson or a teaching. It's very loosely structured, if not structured at all. It's just two friends talking for 2 hours. I think we get into some beautiful ideas, and I think a lot of times people learn best through way of processing ideas. My biggest hope in inviting you into this conversation is to inspire self-reflection and openness and porousness when it comes to learning more about who you are and questioning and challenging the agreements of reality that we have all come to accept as fact. So with that, enjoy my conversation with Justus the Mystic. Welcome,
Thank you.
Justus the Mystic.
Thanks for having me.
How may I call you and how may we call you?
You can call me Justus.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
Justus.
And
That's what most people call me.
And
most of the time.
I wanted to ask you a question that many moons ago when I was a guest on your podcast, you asked me. At least I think this is the question you asked me. Who are you? Who are you?
It's a very important question. And one to which my answer will always change and never be the same twice. Currently, I am nothing. Currently, I am existing in a human body and observing and loving and learning how to navigate existence, consciousness, and experience to the best of my ability in a loving way. And I have been and will be many things. But at the current moment, I have no claims to being a this or a that. I've done lots of things and I will do lots of things, but none of them define me. And I am grateful that I get to exist on the earth in this time, in this incarnation, and have gotten to create a character that I am proud of. And will continue to create a character that I am proud of and that I believe is a beneficial vessel to the rest of human existence. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
I love and enjoy and savor and appreciate and treasure all that is the ever-changing vessel, conscious presence, entity that is you.
Thank you.
What material, physical elements or practices do you find most connect you to the conscious experience of love in this current moment?
What a fun question.
That is what came into my being as you were sharing about you, is I need to know what practical physical elements help you get to that place.
Something that I think something that brought us together originally and to learn of each other and know one another is something that has formed my life and formed how I express, and is a big part of the big question, who am you? Who are you? Is that I love sound. I love music. I love vibration. I love frequency. They fascinate me. They draw me in. They take me deeper. In all various sorts. In music, in listening, in singing, in expressing, in natural noises, in man-made noises, in industrial noises. To me, even the whirling of my heater system in the background is a vibration that is helping inform my existence, as wild as that sounds. But it all is holding things together. I think that is something that I can point to when people ask that question, who are you? I am a creator and observer of sound, of music, of frequency. And I think that is probably the along with many other things, that is probably one of the premier fascinations I have in this life that helps inform who I am being, who I am showing up as, and has helped inform what I experience and how I perceive the world around me. Is that Does that make sense? Is that
Oh, yes. So deeply it makes sense. Yeah.
There's lots of practices. There's lots of different things I've picked up along the way, but I would say that the most informative one and the one that finds the most expression in my life of reciprocation is the fascination with sound and frequency, vibration.
Yeah. Does that process currently look like writing music?
Not currently, not a lot, no. I have found that I enjoy writing from a place of belief and from a place of peace and from a place of understanding and wholeness. And so when I am in portions of my life experience where things are not settled or things have been interesting or confusing, a lot of people run to writing, especially musicians, creators, and people that express in that way. A lot of people run to that to bring them some sense of peace and some sense of solace. And that is not the way in which I create. I actually need the foundation and security so that what I am creating is coming out of a pure place. At least that's what I like to think.
No, I'm very similar in that way where I like to wait and absorb, and it's like the ideas and the songs are being written inside of me before I'm ready to put them into a computer or into an instrument. They're being shaped in the waiting.
Agreed. And I think when people listen to music that I've created, which there's not a lot that's recorded or released, to be quite honest. But when people listen to the music that I've created, even in a live experience setting, no one can argue with the immense weight of truth that is behind the things that I present into this world. And that's something I'm very proud of. But it's also a lot of responsibility. But it's for that reason, because I'm not creating for somebody necessarily. I'm not creating a song for people to listen to. What I'm releasing is actually lived experience in a condensed form that comes out as a song. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of formation, I'll say it that way. There's lots of formation and truth that will be released from this time in my life. But currently it's not a get it down, write it out type of thing. It's an experience I'm experiencing. And once I collect the experience and learn the truths and find the foundation of the next, then I'll have the space to create new life-changing technologies in the form of songs that are ready to be released into the world.
Okay. My mind noodles are swirling around in so many different directions. So I have a few different things that I'd like to ask you about as you're talking. Yeah. Technologies, we're going to get there, because what's wild is, and maybe we talked about this, maybe we didn't, but I've been talking about this on TikTok. My TikTok kind of exploded, and I just turned it over to a beautiful young little spirit who lives outside of the U.S. But what I've been talking about is this, like how songs are portals,
Mm-hmm.
and how we as human beings, our consciousness, we are the most advanced technology that will ever exist in this
Yeah.
iteration, in this dimension, in this, linear plane of Earth. And I think that's so much of like why our spirits are so drawn to one another, our essences are so drawn to one another, because this is this weird time travel world of play that we've discovered in our seeking and in our witnessing and in our observing.
Mm-hmm.
And what came to my mind when you were talking about how you're not creating to release music, we are made for more than hustle culture and for content creation. We are not about the content creation. What you are doing, and what I recognize in you as someone who's making and constructing this architecture of these songs, you're creating something for the collective consciousness to connect to. Whether or not it's released, it's there.
Yeah.
And you're making a huge difference in just the art of being a witness and an observer.
Yeah.
And picking up the pen and sonically designing with sound this portal. And so I feel called to ask you in that, as a witness and observer, what do you see happening in the collective consciousness, or in the collective unconscious, regarding the space of creation as it relates to music, as it relates to sound and vibration and frequency? What does the witness see happening?
Great question. I think I must admit that currently, I've had to really protect myself from collectivity. That sounds very interesting. But it's almost, in my experience recently, I went into some collective spaces that maybe I wasn't ready for, or they weren't ready for me, and experienced the reality of what's going on. So in collective consciousness, I guess I can say it this way, in collective consciousness and subconsciousness, I see immense amounts of fear. I see immense amounts of fear mongering and an attempt to generate extreme isolation and hyper individuation. And I think even though we think of becoming an individual as something to be celebrated, I think that the way in which that has been promulgated in the collective consciousness is actually a deception, to undo us from the recognition of how connected we truly are. With several groups, I'll go into an example, with several groups that I've played music with, and you've seen one iteration of that live, personally, you yourself.
Yeah.
With every iteration of group play in the music space, so bands that have been formed around me, there's always been an understanding of hive mind and interconnectedness. And that is actually, and I actually insist with people that is how we play. So when we're preparing music, people like to be extremely prepared, and they say, Justus, give us the outline for this song. And I say, fuck off. No.
Yeah, I love that.
Justus, let's develop a set list. Why? We don't know what the night's going to be like. And there's different degrees of preparedness and non-preparedness, all specific. But in every iteration of group musical expression that I've done, there's been this insistence on creating a web of interconnectedness that requires us to tap into each other and tap into the collective energy in order for the thing to work. Okay? I love that. That is part of what makes performances that I've been a part of extremely powerful. And I'm glad that I've had that, because every time I learn something new about how psychically interconnected we as human beings are and have the capacity to be. Going back to the question, I really believe that the major influences in the collective consciousness are fear and separation, division. Even before we got on the call, we were talking about Donald Trump being elected as the president of the United States again. And this is just my personal opinion and belief, does not reflect anything on anyone, but regardless of who is in there, we're experiencing the same thing collectively. There is the Harris, the other human being running for president of the United States in this term, had the opportunity to take a stance on genocide and failed to do so, and in fact presented and doubled down in the opposite direction. For God's chosen people, Israel? I don't know. I'm not here to get into politics, and in fact, politics get very, very, very little of my energy. Because the whole thing from the beginning is fucked. 100%.
It's all deception, no matter what head of the snake you're looking at.
And I realized this when, for my birthday this year, my mom took me down to see Hamilton at the Pantages in LA. It was beautiful. It was awesome. And I realized watching that show that one of the philosophers that wrote really beautiful theses and paperworks outlining what it would mean to create a free and democratic society. As soon as he presented the philosophical work for the structure of the United States of America, he was almost immediately discredited and put to death.
Yeah.
Killed. Everything that he presented, twisted. The first election for presidency after George Washington was full of sex scandal and manipulation of outside forces, being the French and the British Empire. So from the very beginning of the foundation of the United States, which was supposed to be a step towards freedom and the capacity for people to create community where they weren't under the tyrannical rule of a king or a queen, was immediately commandeered by the British Empire, which they were seeking to get away from. So here we are now in our day and age with the American world power truly being a Gollum extension of the British Empire, and the empire is collapsing.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do whatever they can to hold on to control, manipulation, and insistence that the way in which the world has been created, that we know as reality, is true. And it's not. So we are in the death throes of empire. And collectively, what that looks like is a grasp for control. It's gone beyond control of product and capital and business and exchange and trade, and has gone into control of the last thing that could possibly set humanity free, which is our intention and attention. And that is what is the prime goal of the empire, is to ensure that our intention and attention is focused on destruction, division, hopelessness, reality, sense reality, hyper scientific materialism, and every single human being has been turned into their own business with their own PR firm, social media, and their own egotistical drive to become famous, which is what the empire wants you to believe is the height of success. Although every single famous person that we see lives in torment.
Yeah. Because it's a performance game. It's the antithesis of authenticity.
Correct.
Which is slavery.
Yeah.
I feel, by the way, everything you're saying, like, my entire body is like vibrating with, I think they call them, what do you call them? The goose pimples.
Goosebumps, yeah.
Yeah, because I've been, as an artist, as a poet, as and some might take issue with this, but I will call myself what I am and what we is and what we am. And I love your language and intentional word choices, by the way. We are modern poets and shamans and prophets, and society would do well to heed our wisdom and to see what we see, because we've been given a gift of sight and a gift of knowing beyond what we're told we know about reality. And that's been what has been shaking and vibrating and resonating sonically in me, is that we must break outside of the nature of our known reality and understand that we are creators and makers and poets. We are the poetry on the page, and they don't get to tell us how our poetry is made. They don't get to tell us what our rhymes are. They don't get to tell us about our syncopation. They don't get to tell us. And I could go into the logical flow of my thinking, but what I feel called to ask you is, from your being and as a witness and observer, where do you find is the hope for humanity and the hope for our country right now?
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a big one.
I was going to say, yeah, just a small casual question.
I think a lot of these realizations come from, and I am, and personally, currently in a place where I have presented these truths and have, as the prophet or as a prophet, I don't want to say the prophet, but as a prophet, as a shaman, as a healer, presented truths that people were not ready for. And have come to recognize in a small way, once again, what it is that the mythos of the story of Jesus Christ actually feels like in lived experience. Because a few times now, but I have experienced this with excommunication and a casting out from the church, the Christian church that I was a part of. And now, secondarily, have experienced the same thing from pop culture and normal people. And I do believe that all people have to come to the end of themselves before they can enter into an understanding of the truths that shamanic, prophetic, seer, magician, spiritual people have to see.
Yeah, that's been a big one for me, is realizing the alienation in itself is the path, in a sense, because that's what led us to the end of ourselves, to the inside, which opened up the third eye, opened up the second sight.
Yeah.
The spirit eyes.
Yeah. And it does take a sacrifice, you know, it does take a realization. And most people are not willing to give that up, especially rich people.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's easier. I mean, I'm agreeing 100% with Jesus Christ, and I'm trying to make a modern day correlation for this phrase because I love it so much. And no one has camels anymore, but it's easier for the camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
For me, that's meaning it's easier for something impossible to happen than it is for someone who believes in capitalism to understand what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I even go so literally with that when it comes to, you know, we're architects of sound. I call myself Mother Architect because that's what I was told. That's what I was told I am, as an architect of light. And when you look at the waves and the sound waves, the higher frequencies are literally microscopic. And I believe, I'm coming to believe and see and witness that the higher frequencies are the frequencies of love. And that's why the smaller you go, which is sacrifice, which is letting go of the ego and the self, which is accepting poverty as the way of being. You know, I've had to make major shifts and sacrifices in my own life and way of being in order to just simply exist, because my body could not handle living in the frequency of capitalism anymore. And I'm okay to suffer for that. I feel peace in the suffering because of that. And I see it as literally going through the eye of a needle, spiritually. But it's the most beautiful, hilarious thing that Jesus could have said in that moment.
Yeah.
Because it is metaphorical, it's literal, it's exactly what we need to see in order to see.
Yeah, and I think understanding that too, I don't think the sacrifice is eternal. I don't think it keeps going. You know, I think that new ways are imagined to where the concept of poverty doesn't exist anymore.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know? And we have to experience it currently because that's the system in which we're currently operating. But I think that going back to Jesus Christ, we're at the end of the dispensation of the Christ character, meaning that the empire that scapegoats Jesus Christ is coming to the realization of the mechanism of the scapegoat. The empire that insists that someone must be punished for a wrongdoing, the people that are doing the punishing are recognizing that they are just as worthy of punishment. And this is what I mean when I'm talking about non-binary thinking. Is the story, the true revelation of Jesus Christ is a stepping stone from the binary to the non-binary. And it's just a phase. It's just a pathway. So you and I and anyone else who resonates with the story of presenting the love of the universe and being crucified for it, we don't have to keep doing that forever. Because it will change. I think that's what we're coming into. And I know and I believe that the people that have scapegoated me in this town, for whatever reasons, are coming into the realization of, oh, I just made that person who was trying to present something good to me, who was trying to present to me the idea that my secrets are not shameful, and that if I show them, they actually lose their power, and I become one with everything. I was so scared of myself that I ruined their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am so certain that my money will keep me safe that I ruined their life because magic is not real and that shit's crazy.
Mm.
And I do believe that these people, on whatever level, from the personal romantic partnership relation, all the way up to the relation of a person and their country, all the way up to the relation of a person and their president, all the way up to whatever world power is dominant. All of those people are recognizing and will recognize, oh, someone could have, if given the opportunity, crucified me for what I've done just as much as I and my egotistical power am insisting that they deserve punishment for what they've done.
Yes, this is wild for you to be saying all of this, because just for anyone listening, thank you, by the way. We haven't spoken about what we were going to talk about. We came into this with no agenda. We spoke maybe a month ago, a little over a month ago. And
for
we haven't
20-30 minutes, and that was the first time in years.
Yeah, first time in years that we've touched base. And it's however you call it, because I feel like language is so derivative that it's so hard to put into words what it is we're talking about sometimes. But I call spirit or collective consciousness is speaking and teaching us the same things at a great distance and in completely isolated within completely isolated experiences. I did a ritual a week ago, a ceremony for myself. It was a seeking ceremony for my own purposes. I won't go into that, but I set up candles all around my apartment, and I made a beautiful sanctuary, a beautiful temple for myself in my apartment. And it was glowing pink and sparkly things and shimmers and all of my most valuable trinkets and possessions and all of my favorite stones. And I had incense and oils, and I wore my favorite pink dress, and I had my ceremony for me, and I am a follower of Yeshua, so I begin my ceremony with, Yeshua, take me to see whatever it is I must see, in order to be whatever I must be, in order to know whatever I must know, in order to learn whatever I must learn, in order to teach whatever I must teach. I surrender me. And the ceremony ended up going in a completely different direction than I expected it to. I didn't know what I expected, but I didn't expect what happened. But before it even started, I turned and noticed in one of my little tiny candles that had barely even formed wax, or like the melted pool of wax, a little moth in my apartment had found its way into the flame and died in a pool of wax. And my first thought was, no, because of my seeking, a creature has suffered. And by the end of it, I turned and I saw the fully melted candle almost dissipated completely. And the realization is that the moth made the most worthy sacrifice of itself in order to see the truth of the flame. And when you're speaking of up to the highest of the highest of the highest of those who are in power, those who have control, those who have lived as resourceful cowards, those who have scapegoated the other in order to run away from themselves. You talked about punitive measures and punishment, and we see what the Christ represents is how we should be, the way of what we should be to return ourselves to oneness. And what I wrote down as you were talking and sharing there is the vision of what I've seen for humanity and what I've seen that has led me to reject my own life and to reject my own path and reject the plans that I had for myself, welcoming being scapegoated, welcoming ostracization and shunning and excommunication. This is what I've been experiencing in the last several months. I have seen that punitive measures are obsolete and will become obsolete. And this awareness is growing and resonating within the collective consciousness. People are changing. People are starting to understand and see that there is no other path aside from this. Otherwise, we're just going to remain in the echo chamber of fear that we've all been in. And the echo chamber of fear, I see it as, as architects of sound, a feedback loop that we're stuck in.
Yeah.
We're just stuck in this feedback loop. But punitive measures are obsolete when the me, is willing to sacrifice the criminal within me rather than scapegoating the other.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. And if I'm wrong or getting it only a fragment of it, correct me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's beautiful. I think the recognition, even in that too, is to recognize that I have the capacity to scapegoat. Mm-hmm. I have the capacity to villainize. And I've done that, certainly. It's much easier than dealing with the self. And sometimes, honestly, people are fucking shitty.
Yeah. Sometimes
people are malicious and they have malicious intent. So, yeah, it is their fault. I think that the thing that I'm beginning to recognize is that what I desire to create is open and honest reciprocation, so that if we decide that the way in which we wish to live is not in agreement, we can create separation that allows us to peacefully coexist without the need for punitive measures and war over resource or whatever, right?
Yeah, like multifaceted ideas can exist at the same time without need to cancel each other out.
Right.
And that seems to be the feedback loop that humanity is stuck in, is no, I must cancel out those.
Right. And there's, even in politics, we talk about the church and Jesus and whatnot. That's our tradition. That's how we were both raised. Personally, I just see it, it's just kind of baked in there. I'll never get away from that because that's the mythos in which my psyche has rested for a long time. I don't believe like I used to believe, but those myths are the myths that are there to give me direction in my life. I find that quite beautiful personally. I've also adopted lots of other myths from lots of other different cultures that bring lots of beautiful things into my life. But the recognition, I think the only thing that I heard you say that I wish to expand upon is that there's lots of ways. There's a multitude of ways. There's a plethora of ways. And no one gets to decide that for you except for you. Can we be honest enough in the decision of our own way choosing to come into agreement with people that create actual community? I want you to think, you and the listeners, whoever is crazy enough to listen to this shit, I want you to think of community. What's the deepest sense of community you felt in your life? What's your current community? What would you consider your current community? And I guarantee 95, maybe 99% of the time, the community that you or other people are thinking of is rooted in capitalism. That's not community to me. That's resource networking, which is great. That's cool. Important, necessary resource networking. But where is community? What is community? What is relationship? How many of your relationships are actually built in love and not built on some type of exchange program?
Yeah.
Even the way we learn relationship is by relational bank accounts. You remember that shit?
I didn't learn about relational bank accounts, but the transactional nature of relationships, that's something that an internal realization that I've had to drastically break down brick by brick and rebuild.
Right.
And
I think that condition is a part of human relation. I think that that's important. However, can we be honest enough in our agreement to recognize when something is no longer working for us? Does that make sense?
Totally, yeah.
Can we be honest enough in relation to go, hey, we were in relation because I got this from you and you got this from me. That's no longer happening. I love you, but I'm going to go find something where I feel fulfilled. How do we expand that communally? How do we generate spaces of safety where people can actually bring them their whole self and be witnessed without being othered?
Everything you're saying is the culmination of the things that are being whispered to me so beautifully, and to hear it echoed back through your eyes and your mind and your spirit, your experience. Community, like you, I feel, well, I guess I don't want to put into words how you feel, but
thank you.
As you have, I have experienced being excommunicated and feeling othered and feeling as though there's no place for me. And what I feel very called to, and I only say that because I lack a better phrase, what I am drawn to, like the moth to the flame, is a community system in which people are free. Humans and beings are free to be who they naturally are in their state of being, where the economy is not one of material things, but of an exchange of energy in full honesty and authenticity. And some may say that this is a child's dream. Yes. Yes, it is. You are so correct, because your dream is a nightmare. And we've created a collective nightmare.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to recognize, that we currently are living in the dream and the imagination of a very small group of, if we're really honest about it, racist white men.
Yes. Who don't know how to process their own feelings or desires. Completely blind to their own feelings and desires.
And that, I mean, just follow Empire all the way back. And even to, which is not white men, but even back to the Roman Empire. And before that. And before that. There's just different levels and cycles of things that have been happening in humanity for a long time. And only now are we to the point where we have access to the information globally. Yes.
Crescendo.
Yeah.
I am so thrilled with this line of topic and thinking. I would love to take a potty break.
Absolutely.
And to come back. And I have some other questions and thoughts that are arising.
Yeah, let's do it.
But it's wild that everything that you're talking about, this is where my mind has been. This is where I've been.
Very cool.
When you came into the call, I noticed before your video came up, your logo, this symbol.
Yeah.
And I've been recently studying symbols and surrounding myself with symbols and really diving into the world of symbolism and creating my own symbols. And I've always loved about you and who you am. I've always loved the symbols you surround yourself with, even though I have no, or I would say had no idea of what you meant by your symbolism. And I don't have your symbol pulled up at all here. But I was wondering if you would be willing to explain your symbol, you know, the rectangles.
Let me see if I can find it.
And if you, later on, you could send it to me and I'll put it in, I'll impose it in for the listeners.
In post.
In post.
All right. Well, let me look at it here.
Yeah.
My friend Ryan actually helped me create this because at the time I didn't really have much graphic design knowledge, or, you know, I'd done it before, but I don't think I had programs on my computer. So I was like, man, I need you to help me do this.
Yeah.
So in my personal Justus the Mystic logo symbol, it came at a time when probably right after I had decided to leave the church, which I like to kind of touch back on. When I say excommunicated from Christianity, I actually know people that have gotten letters of excommunication. That shit's wild.
Yeah.
Like legally written, this section, you violated this, we hold you in contempt, shit like that. Wild fucking shit.
Yeah.
Sorry if you have to bleep me out. I don't know if
it's YouTube.
You're a cursing channel.
My way of being is to accept all ways of being and to be a student and a teacher and a learner and to embrace all. Yeah, you be you.
I didn't get kicked out of church. I grew out of church, and that's something that people do not understand kind of at all, is that I decided to leave because I recognized the truth in which I was seeking no longer fit within the confines or parameters of what was expected in modern Christianity. Even at that point, I was part of a charismatic, non-denominational Christianity, which I loved, quite honestly. Taught me lots of spiritual stuff. That's something that I talk about, and I was actually thinking about this morning, is there are some people that I'm connected to, some friends that I've made this time around back here in Bakersfield, and I was thinking this morning, I've been exploring spirit spaces. I've been learning about spiritual things and have committed my life to spiritual things, like the magic of life, for longer than some of these people have been alive. That's wild. At the time when I left the church, it was because lots of revelation was coming to me. And I don't know what led me to create a symbol for myself. I have there was no direct teaching or anything that I saw that talked about the importance of symbology. But I just started recognizing, I have so much to say and I don't know how to say it, but I want to be represented by something. So in this symbol, you see the golden circle on the middle and the golden circle on the outside. So we have the magical axiom of Hermes Trismegistus from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes that says, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Any person that gets into Hermetic philosophy or starts going down a Western esoteric path will understand that axiom. And so the golden circle is the representation of spirit, and the small one is the representation of my inner spirit, and the large yellow golden circle is the representation of the whole thing being encapsulated. So the inner circle and the outer circle are the same thing in different forms. And they're actually interchangeable and expandable. So that symbol can repeat upon itself and reduce upon itself ad infinitum.
I catch you.
At the same time, I also started recognizing, and this is how I came to my transness as a trans person. I am a trans person. I am both male and female. I am both man and woman and everything in between and everything beyond. Trans, I use the word trans in the sense of encompassing or beyond, not across. So my trans isn't a transition, but an encompassing. And recognizing that the masculine and feminine principles are actually spiritual principles that have been made manifest in this earth, in this incarnation. So the upwards facing blue triangle is, do you see that one? Can I see it?
I don't see it at all in front of me, but okay. I'm
I wish
listening
I could pull
and
it up.
Picturing. I'll look at it later. I can visualize it pretty well as you're speaking.
So the upwards, actually I'll start with the green square. That's the material world. That is manifest reality. The green square. The upward facing blue triangle is the masculine principle of spirit. Force, exertion, will, expression. And the downward facing pink triangle is the representation of spiritual feminine energy. Reception, growth, capacity, nurturing, destruction, devastation, revenge, all of those things. So in this, representing spirit, masculine, feminine, all within side of materium, and all of materium is enwrapped in the same spirit that creates me at the center of my core. I think that's it. I mean, I could talk about it forever, but that's the gist of it.
What else comes to mind when you're revisiting the intention behind your symbol?
I think the biggest thing for me is the realization of the expansion and contraction is always infinite. And it's a bringing together of opposites. It's the bringing together of masculine, feminine. It's the bringing together of polarities. It's an electromagnetic battery, which we understand things in the binary. I was just thinking about this morning, so hopefully it comes out right. We understand things in the binary because that's what fits inside of the green square of my symbol. That's what fits inside of material reality. And forces affixed are either yes or no. So we know reality based on the binary system and have reverse engineered it thinking that the source is binary code. However, the binaries that we understand are actually poles. And we need to stop thinking in binary off on yes, no, I and O, male, female, good, evil, but start recognizing those as poles of an electromagnetic energy. So we've reduced polarity and the flow of energy into binary because we know in scientific materialism that manifest reality is made up of the binary, is made up of energy, vibration, frequency, affixed, slowed down into this table, into this chair, into this body. But every binary is actually a polar system of an electromagnetic battery that allows energy to flow through. And the thing that we see as reality is what our perception has decided to freeze frame that flow of energy into.
Yeah. And for anyone who's like, what is Justus on about? What on earth are they saying? This is not woo shit. This is quantum physics. This is seeing the world through the framework of energy and the understanding that our perception of reality is just that, a fragment of a fragment of a fragment of a fragment of what is perceivable in our vessel based on what we decide to see. And that's the beauty.
Perception. Yeah.
That's the beauty in it, is that we get to decide what we see. And that's the dance. That's at least the part that I'm in right now is the dance of what you decide to see.
And going back to the reality that I think it's pretty normal that, and people would understand that we live in the imagination of racist white men currently. But it is difficult to perceive that agreement is actually what makes that reality. Agreement upon perception. Is that making sense?
Oh yeah, one thing that when I'm trying to discuss with my friends who are doing everything they can to try to understand and yet like finding themselves in a place of disbelief, not for lack of wanting, but just for a lack of a different, or not a lack, I wouldn't say lack, for coming from a very different framework. I'm sorry, I lost my choo-choo train of thought. Where did we leave off?
We were talking about the imagination and agreement.
The agreement,
of
yes.
Perception.
The word agreement is one that I come back to a lot because what we're in is an agreed upon narrative. And the freedom is in the choosing to agree with something different or choosing to disagree. Not agree to disagree. Choosing to say, I don't agree with this anymore.
Right.
And I take that to great tests of my own faith. In, we call it manifesting in this iteration of reality. And I think manifesting is honestly just so cheap. That's like, what do I want to make for myself? I can just get to name it and claim it. It's just the same thing as that. But the materialization... It's
capitalistic magic. Manifesting is capitalistic magic.
Exactly. And
works.
I like...
Cool. Go for it.
It does work. It works. But if that's what you want, if that's the smallness of your vision, then go for it. I believe in materializing...
Tea and shade. Right there.
What?
You spilled it on the children.
We still get to be a little bit mischief and bratty, I like my bratty side. But materializing a different vision, a different dream, instead of living in the daydream of white men, for me looks like agreeing with the reality that I see and that I choose to see. Yeah. And it's wild to see how those echoes of my own thoughts and my own words in terms of agreements, it's actually materializing change in my physical reality.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm not asking for, people look at me and they're like, well, you're still poor and you can still barely pay your bills and your life doesn't look so great from the outside. I'm like, no, but I don't ask for those things because those things are very disinteresting to me. What I am able to see and materialize based upon agreements that I make with everything that I perceive is so much richer and so much more fulfilling. And I could go on about that, but I want to continue to hear what you're talking about when you're talking about agreements.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get confused when you talk about agreement because they have never had to negotiate or think about what it is or be confronted by the reality that they are agreeing to what is.
Yeah.
Something that I've thought a lot about recently is watching, and no tea, no shade, like please continue to speak out, but watching people post things online about genocide in Gaza and the suffering of the Palestinian people. And my thought is by waking up every day and going to work and living your life in America You are complicit to the genocide of the Palestinian people by agreeing to live your life exactly as it's been, and by being an American. You are innately complicit.
But by all means, continue to scream into the void.
Yeah, and we do need to talk about it. We do need to post it. We do need to, but then we're also pretending that we're voting for a president.
We somehow have convinced ourselves that we are detached from that reality, that we're not connected to it.
But we're in complete agreement to it. And the fact of the matter is we would have to give up the majority of what we know, including social media, in order to begin to remove the bloodstains from our hands from the enslaved people that create our technology, from the people that sew our textiles, from the genocide in Gaza. And to be quite honest, most people don't want to confront that reality, because they would then have to recognize that their agreement in the luxuries of their life are the thing that is keeping the machine going. And that's too extreme for most people. That's too much. That's too far. But that's reality. That's the energetic reality of it.
Yes. This is what Spirit's been speaking to me so very loudly, is exactly everything you just put into words, and that's been the wrestling I've been going through of changing the nature of my reality, changing the way I do my business. And I don't even have a business anymore. I dissolved it. And I'm not going to get into details and logistics right now, because it's not about me, it's about the we. It's about the we the people, and what we're choosing to agree with. And the uncomfortable part of all of this is looking in the mirror and realizing that the drip, 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 drip of blood that we're screaming to cease is the same as the drip, 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 drip of the cheap dopamine that we get in our addiction to convenience, in our addiction to comfort. And we as Americans have not had to confront this yet.
No.
This is the first time the dissonance is hitting a frequency that is ear-piercing, to the point where you have to choose one path or the other. Well, I should not put it in terms of binary, but we need to get creative.
Yeah, truly.
And think outside of the box.
Truly.
Yeah, everything you're saying, I'm feeling that so strongly.
Truly, yeah. It's and then on the other side of it, you have the fear of delusional agreement. So you have all these people who may start to recognize that truth if they wish. A lot of people already do recognize that, like, oh, I'm complicit, I try to not be as much as I can. I try to speak up against it, but, I understand that the machine is doing this.
Sorry about the sirens.
Oh, I can't hear them.
Okay.
But then you also have the pitfall of spiritual bypass and spiritual psychosis.
Can you define that for people who might not be familiar with spiritual bypass or psychosis?
I think loosely I would just say it's the concept that people enter into, where they just enter into this state of bliss, everything's fine. It's the epitome of what we think of the hippie movement.
Mm-hmm.
Peace and love, bro, everything's good, everything. I would say a common and I'll go off on this shit right now. I'm not going to, but a common modern example of spiritual bypass would be simulation theory, which is of the idea that we're all just generating our own simulated reality, and we're living in a simulation, and it just, you kind of have to play the game. And it doesn't really matter. Nothing really matters. It's just a game. If something shitty happens in your life, it's because you made it up. If something good happens in your life, it's because you made it up, or you played the game in order to receive it that way. And then it's just all bypassed as a game.
The bypassing of consequences, the bypassing of responsibility, of how it actually impacts others within physical reality.
Right.
Got it.
No big deal. Nothing really matters. And sure, I guess. That's easy for sure. It's easier. Spiritual bypass. Another would be like just concepts of cults or seclusion, where you're just in the mountains in your own little world. That doesn't sound that bad to me, to be quite honest. I get that one personally.
That's the one for me that the initial reawakening to self, the instinct was, I need to get the hell out of here and go into the mountains where there is peace. Yeah. And very quickly, the people around me are like, no.
Yeah.
No.
And that is like a way that you must be chosen for and called to. And sometimes that happens for some folks for a while, you know? But just that kind of bypassing of responsibility, bypassing of action or involvement. I'm going to put this on the shelf for later if I ever get back to it. I'm going to bypass this conflict in my life. I'm going to bypass this, what's it called? I'm going to bypass this cognitive dissonance instead of seeking what's behind it. I'm going to bypass this feeling of anger or this feeling of fear by living in a delusion that everything's fine and good and nothing matters. God's taking care of me. I would say maybe even lots of evangelical Christians enter into spiritual bypass. They just go, God's got it. It's in his hands. Yeah.
Let go and let God.
Yeah. Which is, it works. It's true. But I believe that for most people, there is a necessity to engage in the reciprocal flow of energy. So on the other side of that is you do have that fear of delusional spiritual bypass and agreement to which most people are afraid of entering into some type of cult of personality, to where, oh, we must agree with this person because agreement is what matters. No. You can only agree in truth to what you agree with. And sometimes all you can agree with is consensus reality. And that's okay. That's okay for you if that's where you're at. All you have the capacity to agree with is consensus reality. That's fine. It only becomes not as fine when you recognize the power and control and manipulation behind what is consensus reality.
Yeah, a big, just to say a yes and to that, a big part of what has driven my change of course and my transformation, my spiritual alchemization, if that's a word, is understanding that whether or not you agree with whatever it is that you agree or disagree with, there are people who are quite resourceful in the ways of energy who will create the realities energetically that we are forced to align with and agree with if we do not stand in agreement with our own energies and where our own energies are being directed. If we don't take responsibility for that, then we are just another energetic stream in someone else's energetic stream, which contributes to the nature of this collective daydream that we are all living in. This, as you mentioned, the white male daydream that we're living in.
Right. And we're both white people. It would behoove us to just go along with the thing. Especially me. I'm a white man in a man's body, white, blonde hair, blue eyes. Like, this world was built for people that look like me. And it does not work.
Yeah, why do you choose not to profit off of the package you came in? Quite literally.
Oh. Good question, because I think everyone is even still telling me to do so. You know? I'm gifted, I'm talented, I'm super smart, even though I asked my parents several times if I had some type of handicap or disability. Just because at so many points in my life I've felt I don't get what's going on here. And I think there's something wrong with me because I don't understand it. I don't know what it is. When I'm looking back at my life, I had a pretty extreme health event when I was young, when our family went to camp at the beach, and we sat around a campfire, and I was probably breathing the smoke in or something, but woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't breathe and had to be rushed to the hospital. And I don't really remember that, so it wasn't like a big deal to me, but my body obviously remembers that. I think being queer from a young age, I didn't know I was queer because it just wasn't allowed. But I knew I wasn't like the rest of the guys. I didn't necessarily want to be competitive and play sports. I also didn't objectify women, which was really weird for me. And I thought maybe God had just chosen me as special because I didn't have the issue of objectifying women's bodies. And even now, like, as someone who's attracted to both male and female embodied people, both sexes, both and all genders, I'm not really an objectifier. It's not really.
It's as if the flesh is not what you find tantalizing.
Yeah, and I want to fuck. Believe you me, you know, I have strong sexual urges. But it is a more of a, I don't really want to fuck people I don't know.
A connection-oriented experience.
It's more of a connection and spiritual energy exchange than it is getting my rocks off or coming. So I think being queer and having to navigate being queer without being allowed to be queer was also a completely unique experience. And then once you start to recognize the way that marginalized or other people have been treated throughout history, you recognize, oh, that's me too. And I see the act of colonization in all of those people groups when we talk about I think I'm always just been curious too. Just a curious motherfucker. And so when I went on missions trips as a Christian, I didn't quite understand the purpose.
Same.
Yeah. And it actually ended up being one of the worst experiences of my entire life. Because it felt like, why are we trying to interrupt these people's flow of life to bring them a message that doesn't really make sense?
Doesn't add anything to their experience. Ditto. And I've done quite a bit of missionary work, and the last one was so traumatic for me that I swore off of it because who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I to say what I know is right? I barely know if what I know is right.
And that has made me I like teaching. I like talking about things that I've learned, but I will never tell anyone that they need to agree with me.
Yeah.
Ever.
The last one I did was to teach music. I brought musical instruments to a community that didn't have access to those things, but the touch point was a Western evangelical touch point.
Right.
And they wanted me to preach, and it was traumatizing to sit there with these beautiful other beings who had their own world and their own way of being, their own communities. And how dare I?
Right.
I just wanted to bring music.
And yeah, and I think whoever would organize such a thing would have to be foolish to think that any people group across the entire world doesn't have music. You're dumb to think that. Of course, all people groups have music. They might not have a 6-string guitar that can tune perfectly, but they have music. You know what I mean?
I was the fool who organized such things. But
Gotcha.
no, you're absolutely correct. There was a desire in me to do good, but I had a very particular framework and lens that said must go to different country with people of different skin color and do good deed,
Right.
and have pictures to show on the book of faces and the instant gratification.
Right.
You know, and I can fully say thank you for holding up that mirror.
Yeah.
We need that.
It's hard. And it is a recognition of like, oh yeah, again, binary. I thought I knew right and wrong, good and bad. And these poor people needed my Western technology and music. And all peoples have music. That back to the beginning of our conversation, that is part of the thing that is keeping the world in existence is music. Sorry, threw shade at you so hard right now.
You know what? I chase the shadow so that we can be brought back together.
I get it. I get the impulse. You know, I get it. It's just that deeper and deeper understanding of recognizing of like, whenever I try to accomplish something, I am asserting that I know better than everybody else. But when I am being and expressing, there's no fault that can ever be found in that. And there are aspects of that trip that you planned that were assertion. And there were aspects of that trip that you planned that were love and true expression. And again, you can't call it good or bad. You can only recognize what happened and what was and what is and how that brought us to this point here. Yeah, I think kind of going back to agreement, agreement allows human beings to generate new possibilities. And we often call that excitement or something new. And it's not agreement upon legislation. It's not agreement upon a contract, because love and compassion cannot be written into law. They can't. There's no way. They can only be agreed upon in spirit, which is non-local and non-tangible, which makes it difficult for people to understand, because it requires a sense of trust, purity, honesty, and intention. And more than anything, it requires the individuals making the agreement to know themselves. And that is what everyone is really trying to avoid, is themselves.
It's interesting to me in a society where the narrative is everyone's a narcissist. So within the fear of narcissism envelops us to the point of fearing the love of self and the seeking of the self. And I have found so many personal revelations within seeking that idea or exploring that idea. I wrote down what you said: love and compassion cannot be written into law. And I've been writing very similar things in my journal about how there is no love in law, and there will never be any love in law. And therefore, we must think in ways that are not of the ways of laws and contracts. I see a future where laws and contracts no longer exist because there will be no need, because the currency will change into energy. People will begin to understand and experience the ways of energy as real as we experience the reality of capitalism and material currency. And that is what I feel called to personally. I am a student of energy, and I'm already teaching and beginning to create waves in the realm of energy, because where we cannot affect change with policy, where we cannot affect change with law, where we cannot affect change with this vote or that vote, I believe, as we're talking about delusion, spiritual bypassing, I'm very aware of the fact that many people will look into what I say and what I do and what I teach and view it as spiritual bypassing. But I think there is nothing more hopeful right now than energy and understanding the ways of energy.
Truly. Agreed.
And because energy is everything. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of vibration and frequency and energy.
Right.
And Nikola Tesla is known to have had one of the highest IQs of all of the humans. And not that I put much stock into IQ, because again, this is something we measure in material metric. But even in material metric, we recognize this to be a highly intelligent being. I
regularly talked with extraterrestrials and recorded it.
Really?
Yes.
You'll have to send this to me, because I am. This is something in what I'm sharing with those who watch and witness what I put out there. I'm not ready to delve into what my explorations have brought me to yet, but it's in line with that, and my mind is being twisted into knots again and again and again. Every time I think I've solved a riddle, a new riddle presents itself. But for the sake of the construct of time we live in, I might want to start heading this into a wrapping up direction.
Yeah.
But it seems like you had something you wanted to share. I want to give you the space to do that.
It was just going to be more about people who experience extraterrestrial conversation. But I that was very hard for me for a long time. I have a really close friend who long time ago started talking to me about their communication with extraterrestrials, and I was like, man, this bitch is crazy. But also I have heard the voice of God my entire life and have had conversations with that entity that is extraterrestrial, and that those conversations have always led me to beneficial things, and some really deep truths
And it's always accurate in realm of spirit and in realm of science, material science. It's always accurate.
And I think it's important. I think one thing that I do desire to say is that I have recognized, coming from the background that I come from, that from a very young age, my energy was attuned to concepts of goodness and love. And a lot of the things that I've learned have come into my life because I have committed my life to goodness, the ideal of love, or God as love, and love being the source that continually creates and sustains the universe that we are experiencing. And a commitment to exploring that truth via the mysteries and secrets and understandings and revelations that have been given to me. I have learned recently that not all people have the same types of foundations that you and I have, by being raised in an environment where goodness is of utmost importance. And again, not that we get to decide what's good and bad. But this is why, and I'm so happy that you reciprocated the question at the top of the call, but this is why I always ask the question. And I believe that this is the first step on any spiritual or magical adventure, or is the question that I call the question of Absalom, but the question that you asked me: who am you? And secondarily, what do you desire your world to look like? Who am you has nothing to do with what you do to make a living, has nothing to do with necessarily your actions day to day, or who you're with or who you're partnered with. Who am you is a existential, fundamental question that is asking you to arrange yourself in a reciprocal, energetic cosmos and understand your role in that expression. What do you desire your world to look like? For some reason, as human beings, we have desire. Oftentimes, in our tradition that we grew up in, desire is demonized. But I think both of us have learned, and I will continue to say this forever, that a demon is, and before not too long ago, an angel and a demon did not have separate names. They're just messenger spirits. And any demon or demonic presence that causes any form of fear is a messenger unto your life covered in shadow. And if you take the time to interact with that demon, the shadow will be removed and your anger will turn into joy from the lesson that that messenger has brought you. So your desire is the same way. Your desire may lead you to feel entrapped. Your desire may lead you into places that are scary or frustrating. Let's think of a bad, in air quotes, a bad desire. I'm pretty sure we can all agree that the regular use of heroin would be a bad thing, not beneficial to human existence. But when I look at someone who desires to do heroin, I don't wish to demonize them. I recognize that what they're in search of is some type of blissful retreat from a life of pain and suffering. So behind that desire is actually the drive to create purpose in a life that tells you you have no purpose. Is that making sense?
I'm just drinking it in. Yeah. Everything you share, everything you say, I'm grateful to know you. I'm grateful to call you my friend, my brother, my lover, my sister, my mother, my father. And it's very apparent to me that you are a divine conduit of wisdom and love and creativity. You are not only a vessel, but a being of light, a teacher, and I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you.
And you have a path and have walked a path and will continue to walk a path that includes pain and being misunderstood. But know from this little paradoxical being to another, I see you, I love you, and I look forward to, that's not even the right word because we're time travelers and all encompassing, but this infinite stream we find ourselves in. I'm grateful to be in it with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Before we wrap up, before we bring this to a close, if you had one thing, if today was the last day we were here in this place, and you had one thing to say to the people and to the beings listening, what would that one thing be? No pressure. Spill the tea.
One thing.
I mean, string together as many words as you need.
I think that what I've just said, and with that understanding, is the thing that I will always wish to present, is that love is the source and the force that continually animates and creates and sustains the universe as we know it. And the doorways by which you learn how to access that love are those questions. Who am you? And what do you desire your life to look like? And over those doorways are written, know thyself, and how do I say this? Agreement. Know yourself and know your agreements.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I made a pot of tea before we started today, and I've drank it all, and once more I must go
Finished.
relieve my human faculties. But this was the tea tag that came in the random bag that I opened, and it says, the principal ingredient of life. The principal ingredient of life is love.
Truly.
And I love that that's the note we ended up finishing on.
Truly.
My dear friend.
Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you so much for this simple and easy, lighthearted conversation.
Absolutely.
That we had. And I want to touch base again off of outside of the eyeballs of others about aliens, because oh my gosh, I have some things to share, and I want to hear your shares as well. All right, I love you, friend.
Love you too. Thank you. That was so fun.
I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and
Thank
I
you.
look forward to whenever we talk again.
You too.
All right,
Thanks,
bye.
Rachel. Bye.